You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. This is a special Tuesday episode. I don't usually do Tuesday episodes, but today felt like a good day to talk, right? Because the last 48 hours or so for 49er fans have been chaotic, to say the least. And so to join me today is none other than the most level-headed person that I know, Andrew Pasquini of Niners Nation, Sprint Right Option podcast. You guys know who he is. He's basically famous at this point. Andrew, how are you doing today?
You keep using that word, and I don't know if you know what that means when you're referring to me as that. But thank you. I appreciate
which word?
Famous, celebrity. I don't know. I don't think you know what those words quite mean, honestly. But that's okay. Yeah, man, it's probably great you did this on Tuesday, because I wrote an article Sunday night when Josh Johnson was the Niners backup quarterback. And then you wake up Monday morning and now all of a sudden Baker Mayfield's on the table. We record a podcast and we talk, Jason and I, we talk about how Baker Mayfield's available and how the Niners probably look at him. And now Baker Mayfield's a Ram and Brock Purdy's the Niners quarterback for the foreseeable 7 to 8 weeks, apparently.
Yeah, it seems like everything we did in the last 2 days is already outdated. Like I hate that for us, but at the same time, I mean, this team gives us endless content, so I guess we can't complain. But obviously the first order of business here is talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. And actually, Andrew, I invited you to the show today before we even knew this was going to happen. Yeah. So I guess the timing worked out. But earlier today, and Adam Schefter reported that doctors concluded 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, he does not need foot surgery. That is huge. It's not a Lisfranc injury, also huge. So really, he just needs to heal up for the next few weeks, 7 to 8 weeks to be exact. And I would assume the rehab is incorporated in those 7 to 8 weeks. So it's potential. He could potentially return for the playoffs. If we're saying 7 weeks, that would be the divisional round. If we're saying 8 weeks, that would be the conference championship. Although I also wanted to point this out. So David Lombardi, 49ers beat writer, also said, based on medical opinions I've gathered, the reported 7 to 8 week prognosis may be erring on side of caution for Jimmy Garoppolo. Right. There's a chance 6 weeks is also in play if there's no Lisfranc injury or any surgery needed. And that would put him in play for the wild card round. So look how quickly things change in 49ers land. We're now talking about Jimmy Garoppolo potentially returning for the playoffs as soon as the wild card round. So as soon as the playoffs begin, we could have Jimmy Garoppolo back. Andrew, what say you about all that?
The timeline counting makes me feel like this is like a WWE injury where they're like, oh, John Cena totally tore his pec and he's out like 10 months. And what realistically it was is he strained his pec. He was probably out 4 months, but took 6 months of personal time. So then when he returns in 4 months, it's like, oh my God, he had a year-long injury and he's already back in 4 months. So now like it's probably going to be like week 18 when Garoppolo like comes back. John Cena music hit at Levi Stadium. He comes out, plays the game, all that stuff. No, obviously he's going to be out. Say this isn't WWE, it's real life. But I don't know. I would err on the side of caution. Yes, if hypothetically it's 6 weeks, he can come back in the wild card game. And this all really depends on what Brock Purdy looks like, which that's a sentence, right? It's a sentence that we'd hoped we didn't have to say all season. But here we are. If Brock Purdy looks good enough, and let's say the Niners rip off 5 in a row, which I guess would put them in a 10-game winning streak to end the season, where they go in, beating the Buccaneers, the Seahawks, the Commanders, the Raiders, and then whoever they play, Cardinals, irrelevant team, nobody cares. But if Purdy looks fine, then what's the point of rushing him back for the wild card round against the Giants or whoever you may play if you're still winning games? Now, if Purdy, Niners, let's say they go 2-3, 3-2, Purdy's looking whatever, then maybe let's talk about rushing back Garoppolo for the wild card round, right? in my opinion, like it's tough. This is a tough call. I don't know how many teams have been in this position because we're not talking about, because I'm sure I said this yesterday. I'm sure there's been situations where a team has lost their starting quarterback for the entire season and then they lose their backup quarterback for the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what the Niners had happen, but the Niners had two starting quarterbacks. They had Trey Lance and they have Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't know how many teams are prepared to lose both starting quarterbacks because not a lot of teams have two starting quarterbacks in the first place. So to me, it's really going to come down to what Garoppolo thinks he can do. And I really do think the second he says he feels like he can play, whether it be the wild card, division, championship, Super Bowl. Boy, could you imagine if he comes back for the Super Bowl and the Niners win the Super Bowl? That'd be another thing. But I really do think that the Niners will take this smart. And if Garoppolo says he's ready, that's when he's coming back in.
Well, it would be amazing if the 49ers even reached the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. Like
that's a whole other can of worms of conversation. You got to remember too, Steph, is between the championship game and the Super Bowl, there's a week off. So that is 2 weeks of conversation of, well, Purdy got us here. So
exactly.
Why are we talking about Garoppolo? Yeah. And it's like, it's because it's Garoppolo. Like that's what it is. Brock Purdy is a rookie. He's, dare I say, Mr. Relevant. That's the nickname we're running with now. But one is an established starting, I'm not going to say top tier, but an established NFL starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the other is making his first start on Sunday. And I fully understand, like, well, what if Purdy goes 4 touchdowns a game for the next 4 weeks? I get that. Yes. And if that happens, maybe we talk Purdy more. But it's Jimmy Garoppolo's spot to lose. If he, as I said, if he says he can play, he's going to play.
I'm glad like you went into that because that was one of my Twitter tizzies because we're talking about some of the discourse that, just in the few hours that Jimmy Garoppolo is reported to be coming back for the playoffs. All of these discussions have already started and have taken a form of their own.
Yeah.
So yes, the question is if Brock Purdy, and that's a huge hypothetical. Let's just start there because it's like, why are we even talking about this right now when we don't even know what Brock Purdy is going to be? I mean, I guess it's fun to think about. No, it's not fun actually, but like
none of this is fun. Fun is an objective. Fun would be talking about Jimmy Garoppolo or even Trey Lance. I feel the Trey Lance lovers like, yeah, what about Lance? Fun would be just talking about a healthy starting quarterback that's been established for 16 weeks at this time. Yeah, it'd be real nice to have.
So you would go back to Jimmy Garoppolo, even if Brock Purdy, does ball out, is winning games in these.
What's the definition of balling out? Because in my mind, when I think of Patrick Mahomes balling out, that's 350, 3 touchdowns, maybe a pick. But with Jimmy Garoppolo, to bring it back to him, my definition of balling out is like 250, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The key is like if Jimmy Garoppolo does no interceptions, he balled out that day. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So it really comes down to like if obviously you're getting Patrick Mahomes production or Josh Allen production, and that's like shooting for the moon, hoping you land amongst the stars. It's not going to happen, right? But if we use the size 19 font, if Brock Purdy does that, I think you probably roll with him. But if he gives you what Jimmy Garoppolo has been giving you, just go back to Garoppolo because Garoppolo has the experience. He is a veteran. And I know that's if he's just Garoppolo, just run with Purdy, but Garoppolo's been there. He knows what to expect. He's been with this team longer. He knows the weapons. So yeah, it would take a mighty ball out, dare I say, for Brock Purdy for me to be like, oh yeah, this is the guy I'm totally comfortable going to the Super Bowl with.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it. If Brock Purdy gives you the same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo, which is probably the likeliest scenario if he were to, quote unquote, ball out. For a rookie, I would say like that's balling out because that, for a rookie, like that'd be pretty good. He was the last pick in the draft. Like I'd be like, okay, yeah, this dude's pretty good, and I'd be excited about that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, if he's just giving you that same type of production and the 49ers are still winning, mind you, the 49ers were winning with Jimmy Garoppolo too. So, if
Yeah.
Jimmy's back, you got to just put him in there just because he has the experience that Brock Purdy does not have at this moment, especially in the playoffs. So it's such a silly question, but like I even feel dumb just like answering it because it's like to me it's like so obvious, but there's people having discussions about it. So that's just what I feel. You got to go back to Jimmy.
Yeah, and it's nothing against Purdy. Realistically, there is a reason he was the last pick in the draft, right? Like let's start with there. As fun as it is to say he's Mr. Irrelevant and that fun nickname, right? If he was somebody that teams thought could year one take a already stacked team, he probably would have been a higher pick. And what he did on Sunday was very good. And I started by saying like he did fine enough. But just the more I think about it, just the situation he's put in, right? He's replacing Jimmy Garoppolo, not really knowing the severity of the injury. You're playing a Dolphins team that has the most high-powered offense. And at the time Purdy came in, all we really knew about the Dolphins offense at the time is they hit a 75-yard touchdown pass to Trent Sherfield. And that's all we saw. So at that moment when Purdy came in, it's like, oh God, the Niners are going to have to put up points.
Yeah.
And he came in a situation where the Niners needed to win. The Seahawks beat the Rams. So if the Niners lose that game, they're back into a tie with the Seahawks in the NFC West. And I know they have the tiebreaker right now, so that not huge deal. But there's a reason he was the last pick in the draft. He's not quite ready. And ultimately, to me, it comes down to if Garoppolo's healthy, is now the time to find out what Brock Purdy actually is. And I'm not saying the NFC championship or the NFC divisional or the NFC wildcard round is not the time to find out if Brock Purdy is ready for that moment. You ideally have, as you would with Trey Lance, 18 weeks of evidence to say, hey, he's ready for this situation. Let's run with it. But you don't have that with Purdy. So that's another reason why I think you go Garoppolo if Garoppolo's healthy, obviously.
Right. And that would just be such a big risk and not one you want to take in such a high stakes game. So I'm with you. Luke the Don here says Purdy's height is a big reason why he went so late.
And that's fair too. That's absolutely fair.
That's fair. He's got talent, just not the measurables. Well, look, I just want to point out some of the craziness that's going on. I mean, Larry Kruger a little bit ago just tweeted, is it possible that the 49ers have a better chance to win the Super Bowl with Purdy than they do with Garoppolo? Dante Whitner, and I love Dante Whitner, but I'm so disappointed he said this. Dante Whitner said that, and Larry Kruger agrees. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to say better chance.
We don't know. We don't know. We can't make any definitive statements, better or worse. Like it's just too early to even have these discussions, and I don't know why I keep seeing them. Someone said like Purdy can be this team's Tom Brady. Like on what earth like are we talking about these things right now after he just had like one game? And like, again, not taking anything away from him, he performed really well in that one game. But we have to think about it. The Dolphins didn't prepare for Brock Purdy. They didn't have film on Brock Purdy. And going forward, teams are going to be able to prepare, and they're going to have tape on him, and then we'll have a better idea of what Brock Purdy is going to be. But let's not go ahead and get crazy and make these definitive statements when we just do not know. It's crazy.
Yeah, and better isn't the right. Like, the most comfortable I would say is they have the same chance, because I'm that big of a believer in the Niners defense. I think the Niners defense can make this work. And we saw that last week because they gave up 17 points, but I looked at it and the what's their name? Who they beat? The Dolphins. There we go. I remember Sunday. It was 2 days ago. I remember everything about that day. Is that they had 308 total yards, and that's a good amount of yards in a game. But if you take out the 2 touchdowns, the 75 to Sherfield and the 45 to Hill, they had 188 on their other 43 plays. insane against that high powered of an offense that has gone they went the entire month of November scoring 30 or more points in all their games. And they come into Santa Clara and they score 17 and they don't look like the same offense. So yeah, I absolutely think the defense, I don't think it matters who's at quarterback right now in terms of the Niners' chance. But the one thing I just want to keep throwing out there, and we had 2 examples earlier in the season with Bailey Zappi and Cooper. I always forget Cooper Rush's name. I don't know why. And they both had those little stretches of like when teams didn't really know what to expect. They looked fine. And there was conversation of, oh, well, Cooper Rush, he should start over Dak Prescott, right? Like, probably not. Let's take this back to the most recent time we had this example as 49er fans. And you go back to, I believe it was 2018. Yeah, 2018 against the Raiders. Nick Mullins, right? You remember Nick Mullins' big game where nobody knew what he was, and he went out there and absolutely cooked the Raiders for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He has not had a start since then where he had multiple touchdowns and no interceptions. The only other time he's had multiple touchdowns and no interceptions was when he came in relief for Garoppolo in 2020 against the Seahawks. Remember where Garoppolo had his high ankle sprain, the OG high, the ouchie ankle, dare I say, to throw it back for this podcast, ankle injury. He had 2 touchdowns and no intercept, but that wasn't a start, right? So Brock Purdy will get figured out. And now the question is, how does he adapt to it? And now if let's just give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say the Buccaneers don't fully know what to expect and the Niners beat the Buccaneers as they should. And now the Niners go to Seattle on a short week. And let's say Seattle figures him out and Seattle beats the Niners, right? And Purdy doesn't look great. Now the question is how does he adapt against the Commanders from there? Does he get better against the Commanders or does he look the same? And then we'll start rolling on what the opinion is. What I decided on the Sprint Right Option podcast yesterday, and I've decided I'm not pro Brock Purdy. I'm not excited the Niners are in this situation. I'm at a point where I'm just going to throw out all my preconceived notions of this team, of what I think of Brock Purdy. I'm going to get rid of what's my narrative. That's the word. I'm going to get rid of all my narratives of what I think of Brock Purdy. And I'm going to do that. You ready for this idea, Steph?
All right, let's try.
I'm going to watch and react to what I see. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the season. I'm not going to, because as I said, Jason Aponte and I on the Sprint Right Option podcast, we have been very stark. If Brock Purdy comes in, this team is screwed. And that's what we've been saying all year. I'm going to throw that out. I'm going to forget I said that, and I'm just going to react to what Brock Purdy does on Sunday against the Buccaneers, and I'll tell you what I think. And then after that, I'll tell you what I think he did against the Seahawks, and we'll go from there. I think I'm asking Niners, dare I say, I'm going to be gatekeeping here. I think that's what Niners Twitter needs to do. I think at this point for the rest of the season, get rid of your narratives. Let's just watch this team and see what happens, because I think that's really the best thing to do at this point, because we don't know what's going to happen.
I think that's the most reasonable thing to do, and that's why you're here, like
I try my best,
to just say the things that should be obvious but are just not to some people,
yes.
So okay, we talked about Brock Purdy, and we have this one game of impression. For a lot of people, that was our first impression. We did see some of him in training camp as well. So I have those impressions, and I have the impressions from Sunday's game, and they're entirely different. And I think that's important to note, because next Sunday against the Bucs, it could also be entirely different, right? So kind of to your point, we kind of just have to change our opinion. It needs to be fluid based on the new information that we get on Brock Purdy. So I will just say that, in training camp, he was a very mistake-riddled quarterback,
yes.
I would say. In the first week, he was just throwing interceptions, all the time. And he did not impress me one bit. And he looked like the worst quarterback on the field, especially in that first week.
And that includes Nate Sudfeld, who's not on the Niners.
Exactly. Yep, it does. And then in the second week, it seemed like he kind of just settled down a little bit, still would make mistakes. But in situational periods, he was pretty good. He would string together some drives, and I'd be surprised. I'd be like, wait, did he just do that? Okay. Wait. Okay. And in some cases, he would look better than Trey Lance. Now, I'm not saying he's a better quarterback than Trey Lance. I'm just saying that in those situational periods, he looked more comfortable. And he was able to get those touchdowns. That's
Yes.
simply all I'm saying. And so it did appear that he did improve. And I think that is proven by the fact that the 49ers did elect to keep Purdy over Sudfeld, because Sudfeld was actually showing some similar things to Purdy, where he was pretty efficient in those situational periods as well. But they elect to go with the younger guy, and that's okay. And obviously, it's because the 49ers saw something in him that maybe we did not. In between training camp and final cuts that they liked. And so he's improved, obviously. And what I saw on Sunday would also seem to prove that he has improved since then. And he just showed a lot of poise. He showed a lot of confidence. He didn't really seem rattled at all to me. Like the fact that he had to go in only getting backup reps, for the last 12 weeks or so, and to just go in and beat this team, which again, like, it looks very daunting because, as you mentioned, they had just hit that 75-yard touchdown, and you're like, oh shit, they got to score a lot of points.
Yeah.
And oh man, I'm the quarterback now. Like, I think he handled that really well, in the sense that I don't even think he thought about that. Like, I think he just went out there and played quarterback, and I thought he did a hell of a job. Certainly, I see some things that are encouraging, right? So, the thing going forward is, you brought up Nick Mullins. Like, that's kind of my concern, where he looks like the second coming, and he falls flat after defenses actually get to prepare for him. And, the Dolphins defense isn't exactly the best defense out there. I will give credit to Kyle Shanahan, because I thought he called some good plays for him. Kyle's going to scheme some things open always. But I think he did a good job of sticking to the game plan, even with Brock Purdy in there. It was pretty seamless transition almost. And so that's what I think about Brock Purdy at this moment. I am cautiously optimistic because I know what could happen, right? But as of right now, I would just say I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that's the best way that I could put it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the best way, the only way to put it, really. As I said, it's hard to see these overarching statements of like, oh no, they'll be fine with Purdy. We don't know that. But you mentioned, obviously, Kyle Shanahan really likes Brock Purdy. The Niners gave Nate Sudfeld a guaranteed $2 million to be their backup quarterback this season. He is not their backup quarterback. He is in Detroit, I believe, unless they moved off. I don't follow the Detroit Lions transaction log as much as I should, so I don't know if he's still there, but he probably still is. And the Niners go with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft. Mr. Irrelevant, as I said earlier, that's his new nickname. We're all running with it. We love that nickname. So obviously Shanahan likes him. I thought he was good on Sunday. And maybe the nicest thing I could say for him is the Niners offense looked no different than what we're used to seeing, right? Is they function about what we expected. After he comes into the game, the Niners drive chart is touchdown, punt, interception, touchdown, punt, field goal, punt, field goal into game. And if I told you that was a Jimmy Garoppolo game line, I don't think you'd be shocked. I don't think anybody, if I told you that the Niners put up 33 points with 7 of them being defensive, which means the offense scored 26, and I told you that was a Jimmy Garoppolo game, I don't think anybody would be shocked. And so that's the nicest thing I could say is the Niners offense really felt like it was about the same thing. They ran the ball a lot. Purdy threw the ball a lot, 37 passes. And people ask like, oh, how often does Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball 37? Well, 3 times this season. He's thrown at least 37 3 times. So he's done it before. Purdy's not special for that. I felt like he missed a lot of chances downfield. I remember a specific play where Kittle was running wide open, but he opted for the Brandon Ayuk underneath, which I don't know if that's a diss or if it's once again like, am I complaining about Brock Purdy or am I talking about Jimmy Garoppolo? Right? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And for me, like eyeball test, it looked fine. The thing that I noticed that Shanahan said after the game was I liked how he processed the field deep to short, which felt like maybe a veiled shot at Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think that's what he was going for. I think he was legitimately trying to compliment Brock Purdy for what he was doing in a game he didn't expect to play in, and he played well. So, yeah, man, I think cautiously optimistic is the right word. He looked good. Let's see what it looks like in the second week. Let's see what it looks like in week 5. Let's see what it looks like in the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia, right? Let's see what this looks like. And then we'll start building a picture in the offseason for what Brock Purdy is, because dare I say it, and people aren't going to hate it, people might not like it, but I don't think it's the worst case scenario if there's a conversation in the offseason of like, well, is it Trey Lance or do we actually believe what Brock Purdy is, right? Is it an offseason that we're not looking forward to as content creators having to talk about it 18 times a week of Purdy versus Lance? Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but from a franchise standpoint where you're like, do we want to run with the third pick in the draft or do we want to run with this guy who, fingers crossed, won a Super Bowl, right? Ideally won a Super Bowl, who was the last pick in the draft, right? So that's what you want as the 49ers, is to have that very tough, annoying conversation, but
It's a good problem to have.
It's out there now, right? Like if Brock Purdy does, like even too, let's say Purdy gets them to the NFC Championship game, Garoppolo takes over from there, wins the NFC Championship game, and wins the Super Bowl. Is there enough there to have the conversation? We can even throw in the like extend Jimmy or go with Purdy or go with Lance. Like now we have 3 options. So it's such a unique situation the Niners are in. I am cautiously optimistic for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, that is fair. Just a quick reminder, everyone, make sure you hit the like button if you have not yet. We appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe if you have not yet. Well, some players are saying some good things about Brock Purdy as well, right? So Brandon Ayuk he was invited on a podcast. I think it was today. At least that's when the clip came out. So I'm going to share it with you guys here and see what he says about Brock Purdy.
Jimmy G gets hurt now. You got Brock Purdy coming from Iowa State, who was the last pick of the draft. And you don't make these decisions. Baker Mayfield just gets released, and everybody, the 49ers are claiming. Are you comfortable finish the rest of the season when Brock Purdy is your quarterback?
Give me Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, first of all, people talking about the performance he had. We talking about a backup quarterback. You say Mr. Irrelevant, 7th-round draft pick, a quarterback in his rookie season, and it's beyond how he played. It's the preparation throughout the week when you don't even think you have a chance to even touch the field. You still prepared to go out there and give yourself a chance to perform.
He played well yesterday. He looked good to me.
That's why I can respect it. He gave himself a chance to perform because the way that he prepared when he didn't even think there was a chance in hell that he was going to play. And when that moment came, he played well, and he came up to me earlier, just right before I came in here, man. I missed you on a few things. That's on me. Just know I'm gonna get better and I'm gonna feed you. As a receiver, I'm like, damn, you ain't gotta tell me, you gotta apologize to me. But I feel it. I feel the energy. So it's like, I don't care who on the waiver wire, what they talking about out there. I'm rocking with B people.
So that's what he had to say about Brock Purdy. And you can chalk that up as that just being like a politically correct answer. And, what else is he supposed to say? But he seemed very adamant to like get that point across. And I feel like, when you're kind of giving that, politically correct answer about a quarterback, it's usually kind of like the same generic phrases like, yeah, like we're gonna rally behind, so and so, and it's next man up, and and just those really blanket statements like that. But what Brandon Ayuk said kind of just struck me as something that he was kind of passionate about, and he felt strongly about how Brock Purdy looked in the game and how he prepared for the game. That was one thing he mentioned, and the impression of Purdy going up to him after the game and even saying like, "Hey, sorry I missed you." Like, I mean, those are things that can't really be taught, right? That obviously leave impression on some of the guys in the locker room.
Yeah, and the funniest part to me is the part like, yeah, you don't have to apologize, like, you know, you don't have to
Right.
say that to me. I feel like when I do, I don't watch the tape as much as I used to, but I feel like when I do, like the receiver who, and this isn't a complaint about, I love Brandon Ayuk, he's my favorite 49er, but I feel like the one player, whenever he feels like he's open and doesn't get the ball, who has the biggest reaction each time, and you watch tape, you see what I'm talking about. It's Brandon Ayuk. Almost every time he does not get a ball when he feels like he's open, there is some sort of physical reaction that you can see. And then once again, he's a receiver. That is not a complaint. So Brandon Ayuk, if you're watching, not a complaint. I love that out of you. So keep that up. So I thought that was funny. Like, you don't have to apologize. So I thought that was fun. But yeah, man, like it's good to hear it, especially too with it wasn't even the way the question was posed as well. Wasn't even like how do you feel about Brock Purdy? It was a very distinct comparison to, hey, Baker Mayfield's available. Would you rather have Baker or Purdy? And I felt like he went above and beyond to his defense of it. I haven't seen Brandon Ayuk get that excited talking about something. So maybe there is the thought that this team is actually really excited for Brock Purdy. And yes, Steph, you make a great point. It could be they're just saying it because they can't say I hate Brock Purdy and I don't want him on this team, because if they did, that's another story. And that's another 2.5 hours of content for us as well. So that's pretty fun. But he definitely did perk up. He, like, you could see he kind of has that lean into the mic thing. And when he starts answering the question, he gets excited. So there's something to it. It is exciting. There is, and I hate to say it like this because of the circumstance, there is always this new excitement of a new quarterback, right? There's always, like, no matter what the situation is, it's like, well, maybe this is the guy. Every quarterback you can talk yourself into, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's always about what they can be,
exactly.
The possibilities.
We have 1 week of evidence to be like, maybe this Purdy guy is good, right? So I'll take it for what it's worth of what he said, but I think there is something behind it, because he definitely looked very excited to be able to talk about Brock Purdy for as long as he did, because that wasn't a short answer. It was a long answer. It was a very long answer that he gave. So
Paul here says Purdy was a 4-year starter in college and has been going against the best D in the league every week on the scout team for months. He's going to be a great QB2 for Trey. Okay, I like this, because it's like, you're giving your props to Purdy, but also, you're suggesting that it will be, in fact, Trey Lance's season come next season. I mean, that would be a great to go from Trey Lance and Jimmy to Trey Lance and Purdy. I think would be a great transition for this team, because they've had a really tough time, I think, separating themselves from Jimmy Garoppolo, just because he has been good enough. But he also, struggles with being able to stay on the field, for an entire season, and, other performance things. But I think the biggest thing has always been the injuries. So to be able to, like, finally have a good transition to something else that they feel comfortable with, because now it's not just Trey Lance. They have someone who they would be comfortable with in Purdy. I think that would be a great transition. I like this thought here. And yeah, Purdy does have a lot of experience. He had a lot of experience in college. And Fred Warner also pointed out the fact that, he's going up against our defense every week. I think he's going to be fine. So I think even that in itself is a vote of confidence in Purdy. So it's just nice to see players, rally behind him. They're calling him BCB now. Have you seen that?
Yeah, my friend Brian Rennick may have been the one to start that nickname, because right after the game he sent a meme that came out, and Paul, I think this is the most likely scenario. I think it's Trey Lance QB1, and I think it's Brock Purdy QB2 next season. But hey, as I said, I think it's a good thing that if this conversation gets a little more contentious in February, right? So that could be fun, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Talking Niners quarterback is really what podcasting is at this point. Is just talking about what the next step at 49ers quarterback is. That's all this is. Buy a microphone, get a YouTube account, talk 49ers quarterback. You got a podcast.
Yeah, endless content. Michelle here says, looking forward to a possible Bosa video on Friday. Yes,
I
there
love
will be a new Bosa video. He gave me so much to work with this past week that I just have so many ideas. So thank you to Bosa. Yes, there will be another video. And okay.
How cool is that, by the way? Like, you're a podcaster, you're well known, you're on KTVU and all this stuff, but like you're also like TikTok famous at this point. How cool is that? I tried TikToking once a blue moon ago, whatever the saying is, in 2020. Couldn't get into it. I feel like you've got that market. You are 49ers TikTok.
Well, I wasn't planning for it to be a thing, right? Like, I just did it the one time and I was like, yeah, this is kind of funny. I wasn't planning to.
Yeah, well, sometimes
I didn't think it was going to blow up.
Once things blow up, it's like, oh, well, maybe this is
shit.
something. It's fun to see what people think is really you think, hey, this is a one-off, we're just gonna do it, and then it's like, no, this is amazing, like, keep doing it.
I'm surprised by that. It's like, can you do one every week? And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if I have that many ideas.
I'm really excited for the free agency bidding war of Nick Bosa in 2024 and having your daily TikTok updates with all the rumors of like Nick Bosa's reaction to the Baltimore Ravens offering 5 years, $230 million, you know, like
don't stress me out. I don't want to think about any other team.
Is this not the right week to
Bosa.
bring up the Nick Bosa thing? Is this not the right week? My bad, guys. Nick Bosa hasn't signed an extension, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Just stress me out more.
I don't want to think about Bosa on another team. That would just crush me.
Well, Joey Bosa's on the Chargers. It's not too hard to think of a Bosa on another team. I thought that was good. Sorry,
that was a good one. That was a good one. That was great. You thought about that one like right then and
there.
You
know, sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't.
Funny guy. Look, okay, before we head out, I want to just point out one other thing with this Brock Purdy discussion. And it's one that I've had about Jimmy Garoppolo as well this season. And it's the Brian Griese point. Because I think that Brian Griese has done a great job with Jimmy Garoppolo this season. Yes. And I do think that he deserves some credit for Jimmy Garoppolo hitting this stride and not losing it. I mean, that was always a knock with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? He'd have 2, 3, maybe good games, and then he'd have a bad one.
Yeah.
And, you know, he might have another bad one after that. It was just very up and down. After the Broncos game, he has not looked back. He has pretty much been on point and a good enough quarterback to lead this team to wins since then.
Wow.
And I think it's because of Brian Griese.
You just said since the Broncos game, and my brain hasn't gone that far back in terms of looking at Garoppolo's numbers. I'm assuming since you directly said since the Broncos game, you know what his numbers are.
I haven't really looked at the stats, but just from like memory, because that game was so terrible.
So you want to hear the numbers? And then I'm gonna throw the Miami game out. I'm just gonna throw the Miami game out because it's four plays, 56 yards, whatever. So from the Rams after the Denver game to New Orleans, you want to take a guess on yards? I'll go yards per game. Whatever. I'll just tell you. Give me what you think his touchdown to interception is since Denver.
The ratio.
Yeah. What's touchdown to interceptions?
2.5.
Oh, well, I can't do quick math like that. So tell me how many touchdowns to interceptions. I can't do decimals that quick. Steph, come on.
How many games is that then?
8 games.
I need to do math. Now
8
you got
games.
me doing math over here. So I would say 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions?
14-3.
Okay.
And that's 8 games. So if you actually and I know you can't exactly, if you put this over a per 17 game season, close your eyes and imagine if I told you Jimmy Garoppolo did this in a 17 game season and tell me how undefeated the Niners are. That 8 game over 17 games, 4,284 yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
That's
Imagine,
like
could you imagine a Jimmy
top-tier
Garoppolo that
quarterback
season?
numbers.
That's
Like
17-0. That's
like
20-0.
top 10. That's top 10 quarterback numbers.
And with this Niners team, if
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo gives you 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions over a 17-game season, that's a 20-0 49ers team.
Yeah, very well could be.
That's an undefeated team. I don't care. So, anyways, not to break off your point from
No.
You just,
I think this helps make my point. This helps make my point because we know that Jimmy Garoppolo did not have the playbook until the start of the season, basically. So he didn't work with Brian Greasy until the start of the season, basically. And I think the timelines, like if you look at all of that and you look at when he started playing better, like it kind of goes along with that timeline. And so, yes, I'm giving the credit to Brian Greasy for keeping Jimmy Garoppolo consistent. I think so. Now, given that, I think that Brock Purdy, he has a new project with Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
But I think he has something. We see it. There's something to work with there, right? There's something that could be improved on. I mean, you mentioned, he missed some throws. He could have probably gone deeper on, and could have been a touchdown. You know, those little things, those little kinks he has to figure out.
Yes.
I think those improve. Is it crazy to say? Like I'm encouraged because of Brian Greasy.
Yeah, no, and my issue with Brock Purdy isn't necessarily like I don't think he can develop into something. Like what my issue is now is not the time to find out what Brock Purdy is, right? If you say Brock Purdy's the Niners week 1 starter and he's the starting quarterback entering the season, and I could be talked into, like, just like I was talked into Trey Lance, because I'm not super high on Trey Lance personally. I think the way Kyle Shanahan used him might have been a little telling of what they think of him as a passer. But if you told me that Brock Purdy at week 1 is your starting quarterback, I could be talked into seeing what the development looks like, especially with what Brian Greasy has done. Unfortunately, it's week 14, and the Niners are in very much a big playoff race right now, and now is not the time. So Brian Greasy has been nothing short. And honestly, Steph, it's my fault. This is the first time I've talked about Brian Greasy this season. So for you to check, I haven't really. I'm more of a Chris Koceric talking about big D'Amico Ryans guy in terms of coaches. Yeah. But I honestly, the Brian Greasy hiring, especially after Rick Scrangello, God, I'm Italian. I should be able to say the Scrangello. I don't know. He got fired. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't need to know how to pronounce his name anymore. He got fired from his job at Nebraska or wherever he was at. But you're absolutely right, because we never saw this consistent play from Garoppolo. And so maybe there is a case of Brian Greasy being that guy, because when they announced they hired Brian Greasy, it was kind of the same reaction I had when they hired John Lynch. I get he's a former player, but like he's a TV personality. What's he going to do? And I'm not trying to diminish what Greasy did as a player. He's never had coaching experience in the NFL, which apparently the Niners seem to like and make it work. So Brian Greasy, what he's done with Jimmy Garoppolo and the change we've seen, and it's not been a big change. It's crazy how Jimmy Garoppolo is still the same quarterback. They just figured out how to cut down his turnovers. And it's amazing how different that looks. So, if Greasy got that out of Jimmy Garoppolo, there's no reason to believe he can't get something productive out of Brock Purdy. And so, absolutely. I had not thought about that angle. So great question, honestly. I had not thought about the Brian Greasy angle, but there's probably something to it, because could it be coincidence that Jimmy Garoppolo stopped turning the ball over? Maybe, but I think the evidence probably points to what we've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo the last 6 years.
Yeah,
maybe Greasy in his ear and kind of teaching him is what caused the change. So great. This is why you should listen to the 49 Carats podcast. This is why you should listen to KTVU, because Steph gives you this insight. I love that. That was a great question.
Well, okay.
And I
And
don't think
I
I
guess-
really gave you an answer because, as I said, I that was so far off my radar thinking about Brian Greasy in that sense. So
Well, now you won't stop thinking about
now
it.
I
Like,
won't, and now
like-
I'm 100% gonna go to Sprint Red Option Podcast, talk about Brian Greasy, not mention this podcast, not talk about how Steph put it in my head, and act like I'm this. No, I'm giving you all the credit, obviously. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and God, I forgot what I was gonna say, but
I'm really good at that. I'm really good at taking a really good point you have and then just taking it so far away that you're like, what were we even talking
like, oh,
about?
shit.
Yeah, I'm really good at that. I'm elite. That's one of my best talents.
well, because you just made so many good points that I was just left speechless, basically. So
I'm still speechless at this 30 touchdown, 6 interception Jimmy Garoppolo.
yeah, that is
That's something.
those are some good numbers. Oh, okay. So now we'll really find out, I guess, if that is true, that Brian Greasy, was able to do this with Jimmy Garoppolo, if he gets a lot of the credit, because if we do see an improvement in Brock Purdy over these next few weeks, that we're going to be seeing him start for this team, then I think it would be pretty safe to say at that point it's not just coincidence, and is probably the product of Brian Greasy and his coaching. So yeah. I'll just leave it at that, because I think that's a good thing to end it on. And Andrew, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I feel like we really needed that. We just needed to talk.
Listen, my thing is my goal is to try and not take this too seriously, right? I think football is supposed to be fun. I think it's very fun that we get to talk about it at this level. I'll be honest, we were both at the game on Sunday, right? Do you want to know what my instant reaction was to the first play of the game?
Oh God.
The Sherfield 70. What was your reaction? I want to know what your reaction was.
It was weird, because I was like, I was surprised but not surprised, but I also was not panicked. Like, I was like really? Okay. That's what. Okay.
So with where I was sitting, the second the ball was completed, I could see the path.
He was going, yeah.
I didn't even see Sherfield cross the goal line. I was laughing. I was laughing so
You're
hard.
one of those that's
like nothing
it's so
against the
bad you gotta
Niners. I
laugh.
love the Niners. It's just like, I'm going to my first NFL game in 15 years. I saw Peyton Manning versus Alex Smith. That is the only NFL game I've been to in person.
Holy shit, man.
I get there, hyped up, like, let's go. Niners defense going to cook. We just shut the Saints out. How am I supposed to react to a set? I didn't even realize it was to Sherfield until my friend told me, like 10 minutes
I
later.
didn't realize either.
And you know what the worst part is I went home and I wanted to watch that sequence again just to see what it looked like on the TV. I started laughing again. Like, that's how objectively funny that was. Like, obviously now Niners won. It didn't cost them a game. But for the very first play from scrimmage, Mike McDaniel, he specifically was like, no, we're going to hit him with Sherfield. We don't care. We're hitting him with Sherfield. And it hits for a 70. It's maybe the hardest I've laughed this year. It was so funny. Niners win. Doesn't matter, guys. So don't yell at me for thinking it's funny. But yeah, that was my instant reaction to the Sherfield touchdown. I was just laughing.
No, it was bad. It was bad. But I was like, okay, like, don't let this affect you. It's just the one play.
And like, even too, like, my friend, I went with my friend, he's a big Dolphins fan, right? And I told him, hey man, the Dolphins might walk down the field on the first drive of the game. That's kind of what D'Amico Ryan's defense does.
Yes.
They adapt. They're not really
he kind of waits and sees what
what they're dealing with. And I
Yeah.
think that's why the scoreless streak happened. And so I said, hey, don't get too excited at a first drive that looks really good. And then it's the first play of the game.
Yeah, we'd never seen that.
It wasn't even the first drive. It was the first play. And then what did the Dolphins do? What did the Dolphins do the rest of the game, Steph?
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
They went fence down.
D'Amico's Ryans. We love that man here. I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him when he's the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals or wherever he ends up going.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't go to the Cardinals. But yes, I'm definitely gonna miss.
We're Niner fans. It's going to be something obnoxious. It's going to be like the Cardinals.
No, honestly, like all the places that the other coaches have been, thankfully has been to the AFC, and maybe that's Kyle Shanahan's like final wish, like
Yes, just like try not to hurt me.
If you leave, do so in the AFC.
Do you think, like, honestly, because it's been McDaniel to the Dolphins and it's been Saleh to the Jets, but before that, like, not directly tied to Shanahan under him as a head coach, but it was LaFleur and McVay, right? Do you think with McDaniel and Saleh, he's like, listen, I know you guys have offers of these NFC teams, but do you see how much I've cooked Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur? Are you sure you want that smoke? Oh, no, you don't? Okay. Have fun with the Dolphins. I think that's what it might have been.
That would be
honestly,
a great final word,
I think Shanahan has threatened them and just like, I have murdered Sean McVay. Do you really want this to happen if you go to the Vikings? We might play in the playoffs and I'll beat you 45-17 in the playoffs. You want that? And they're like,
I mean, that's
I'll go to Miami. I'll go to the Jets. We'll stay away from this. I don't want it.
I like warm weather anyway. So yeah, no, that's a good point. And no, Kyle Shanahan dominates his former assistants basically.
Yes,
he's now 12-5 against.
Is that what it is? I was trying to
find 12-5. I tweeted it wrong. I was like, I was going based off another tweet I'd seen, and they accounted it wrong, I guess. So
because what do you count as the and we're way off topic at this point, but what do you count as the Shanahan umbrella? Because in my mind, I think it would be the people that were assistants under him as a head coach, not people that had coached with him in the past. So I think the direct umbrella is Dolphins guy, McDaniel. There we go. I know names. So I think his direct is McDaniel and Saleh. And was LaFleur here? That was Saleh. LaFleur was here, right?
Yeah.
So LaFleur was under Shanahan. So McVay, I don't really count him. But LaFleur and Saleh and I don't know why I keep forgetting McDaniel's name, but McDaniel, I think they count.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely count. Obviously, the McVay one throws it off a bit because the Niners are 153-1 against them, and unfortunately, the one is that one we don't talk about.
So just as like a mercy, like we should just not count McVay.
I think we should not count McVay. Yeah, so then I don't have to hear about the NFC Championship game anymore.
Oh, I like that. Okay. I like that one. Good idea.
I laugh at the Niners' pain, but I'm still very scarred. Okay. Oh yeah, Paul, did you see the updated one? Because they added McDaniel now because Shanahan beat McDaniel.
I don't think I saw that one.
There's definitely.
Send me that one on Twitter. I didn't see that.
I've seen an updated one out there. Absolutely, we're way off base here now. We're just talking at this point, but that's what I like to do. I just like to try and I feel like with the Sprint Red Option podcast, I like to make it about the 49ers. I slowly try to make it as much as not about the 49ers as I can, and we go from there.
I love it. I love it. Well, all right. I got a new desk, so I was like, I gotta rearrange some things. So I'm gonna work on that. And Andrew, thank you once again for coming on the show, and always a pleasure. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe if you have not yet, and have a good rest of your Tuesday night. New video coming tomorrow. Peace.